Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, Malik Spellman, to tell you that we have another fascinating, amazing conversation that we feel will contribute to our arsenal of pre-interviews before we get to our studio status as a real segment in this game. As you notice, I got the red and blue flags behind me that's symbolic to something. And then I got a book behind me called The Winter Before Death. And the reason I wanted to highlight this particular book is because it was written by a friend of mine named It's going to be reverb on there. It's going to be written by a friend of mine named E.W. Womack. And I'll get to the point of how this book correlates with what I want to talk about. As you know, it's important we hit that subscribe button. No jive. Hit that subscribe. Let them know that it's important we get these subscribers up so we can help get the word out. And even if you just have one or two people listening, it's important to have your archives reflecting some of the work that you do. So when you do decide to get many other viewers, it'll be great. Again, hit that subscribe button. What's Your Story with Malik Spellman? I'm your host. Check this out. Tonight's topic is about your loved ones that's behind the wall. This time of year is very, very, very difficult for people who are incarcerated to maintain their position, meaning you have loved ones that have been in there since the 70s that have never gotten any contact. A lot of people have died. You know, shout out to my boy Lavelle Keith, who's incarcerated, been there since 73. Then you got a lot of young people in there that's just getting incarcerated that don't really know the dynamics of all these particular holidays that are traditional in the Black community that they're going to miss. Not to mention the quality of life that they would miss and all that other stuff. There's nothing colder on earth. That's why I correlated The Winter Before Death, the title of this book, which was written by a brother from the streets, E.W. Womack, who grew up on the east side, South Central Los Angeles, a quite prolific writer, to say the least. And it's a Trials of a King type book, and it's one of many. But then he wrote another book called The Big Evil, which depicts lifestyle growing up in South Central Los Angeles with residents like Brother Big Evil from the Swans community and other communities that were also tribes of Mustafa. The reason that The Winter Before Death is interesting is because we seem like we're all victims of a winter before death scenario, meaning being incarcerated is like being frozen alive because you're behind in time, you're behind in technology, and the missing of your family is undescribable, or is there such a word, indescribable, perhaps, meaning that what we take for granted on the streets, like mail or letter or phone call or the right meal or something like that, that is overwhelming, not just every day in prison, but in particular on these particular days, should I say, not to double pronounce the same word, but on the contrary, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. I used to sit there and look at brothers, man, and go into pure emotional cardiac arrest because they didn't get a letter, or they got the wrong letter from their woman, or they sitting in there and they got the wrong letter from the courts this time of year. So it's important that all your homies that died for you, all your homies that threw up the hood, the block, that was wrongfully convicted, over incarcerated, remember them this time of year, because see, you can't call collect no more. They got tablets and all that, thankfully. But you can't forget your loved ones. And that's why I brought up this book, The Winter Before Death, because it talks about the struggle of two kings, two brothers, and several other tribes that were fighting for peace and tranquility from on different levels. And I figured, what better coincidence could it be that The Winter Before Death correlates with the word prison? Prison, to me, is the word prize son. And most of the people in prison are the black sheep of their families. They're the people who attempted to get out and hit licks, or wrongfully incarcerated, or perhaps sold drugs. I don't know what the scenario is. Maybe they caught a case on a hot one. But for the most part, man, you cannot forget your loved ones anywhere in these plantations. It is the coldest winter before death. It is the worst situation to ever be in. To be able to contact your mom and you hear everybody. Put it this way. When I was incarcerated, unfortunately on the plantation, the worst song they would play was Family Reunion, by the OJs. Well, that's what they do in there. And just keep in mind, a lot of your loved ones that are young going in there now, let's start with them. They'll never take a bath again in another 20, 25 years. They'll never have keys in their hands. They'll never hear the sound of children on a regular for the next 25, 30 years. They'll never drive an automobile. They'll never get a chance to go to graduations. A lot of these young dudes never graduated, never bought a house, never had a girlfriend, made children. So as that time pipes on up in there and you be piping and the homies stop answering, it becomes a winter before death. So remember your people behind the walls. This is going to be short and sweet like bear meat. Please, whatever you do, if there's something they need you to do, send a package, contact a lawyer, talk to a witness if it's necessary, accept their phone calls. Even if it's nothing that you can do. Just remember, it's the winter before death. A lot of brothers on death row, man, sitting there stuck that want to get out here and help. So everybody that's in prison is not guilty or innocent, and everybody in prison is not waiting to come back out and terrorize the community, black people, because we can't take no more from other people or from ourselves. We're literally out of gas when it comes to oppression and frowns on our faces and bad energy. We need more infusion of good energy into our lives, because we're at that point to where once you put enough pressure on oppressed people, then they become creative. They recreate themselves. And once that recreation manifests itself, then it becomes a culture. And whatever culture that you choose to direct it into, that's what it becomes. So if it becomes a culture of violence, then that's what it is. So if we can captivate the imagination of the American people and then beat a different drum, because see, now we're beating the war drum. Let's beat a different drum. During the slave era, that unfortunate, wicked, evil time in our lives that no human being on the earth ever endured or could endure, we beat different drums to run the slaves through the Underground Railroad. This drum meant don't go that way. This drum meant shoot. This drum meant peace. So remember that. So remember some of the techniques that your ancestors had, and also the poor that are on the streets. When our ancestors ran from one plantation to the next, the sisters would braid rice into their hair, and different items and objects. Even in the Jewish community, they would put notes inside their teeth and in their cavities to hide it from the oppressor. So we have to find a way to get these messages out to the poor in such a way that this holiday they don't feel left out, because suicide is real. And once you're dealing with suicide, there's no turning back. That's a sad state of mind and being for a human being, that God or whomever you choose to pray to gave you as a choice, as a gift. Wherever you got it from, it was a gift because you didn't have it. So remember your loved ones in juvenile hall, the one you're supposed to went to court for that day, and especially around this time of year, because this time of year can be quite frightening. And this is not a situation, it's none of that. It's just what it is. Oh, and I think I bought something else too. I normally don't get in on conversations that I already know the answer to. But since we got so many different house mouses in the world, see, and behind the wall, if you have friends behind the wall, they keep you enlightened to the lingo. And they got house mice, they got, snitches, they got abusers, police. But then you got people who do nothing for poor people, not to mention what they say, because what they say has nothing to do with me. Everyone has a freedom of speech, as long as you don't offend other people. And if you do, be ready for the consequences. But for those that I know, because you're Black, I'm not going to ride on you in full detail. I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that what you've done with some of your blessings that you've gotten from God doesn't necessarily help out Black people. Meaning, let me give an example. Too much is given, much is expected. And if too much is given, much is expected, then we expect you to at least make it obvious, if possible, to be able to enjoy some of the fruits of your benefit that you've had. But if not, for all you on the plantation dudes, and you know who you are, we took the whip from the slave master. You off the plantation. I'm going to say it again. We took the whip from the slave master. So if you've been able to be a slave and you freed yourself, Go buy some other freedom for some slaves. Medea and them need some bus stops. We need all kinds of leadership programs in our community because there's hope for young people. It's just that you guys don't believe in it because your hope goes someplace else. So if you're out there in the listening audience and your phone and you're calling in, your phone's on reverb or something, please turn it down. But for the most part, again, Barkley, I gotta mention you, dude, because I know you full Negro. We took this from the slave master, and at some point, we may have to put this on your back because you do nothing for black people, nothing. And then you expect people like myself and others to do for black people, and we don't have the means or resources. And this is not a race thing. This is something that we learn from other people. Put yours first. Because love yourself, which is us, for no one is greater than us. And that's poor people. I don't care what race you are, oppressed. But for all you guys that want to put us on the plantation, we fought to get us off the plantation. That's why we got the whip right here. And you trying to put us back on it. Then you're teaching young brothers that we took out of chains. Again, in my other conversation, my other interview. And now you're putting them back in chains with big, stupid gold chains instead of teaching them to buy land, instead of teaching them to invest into, their 401k or to start a tech business where they get $1,500 a minute or something like that. You decide to take your ideas and ideas elsewhere, and your ideologies and perspectives are shown in the way that you treat us. And this is to the guilty, not the innocent. So again, it's a couple of minutes left on this. We'll keep it short and sweet. But remember, your people behind the wall right now, it's the coldest winter ever. It's my homie feeling them that call me from behind the wall. And shout out to all the brothers that I'm going to be taking phone calls from on this show that are incarcerated. That's going to let them tell you the story. See, because we got to get to the meat and potatoes of what really pertains to us. We can't jump into other situations. That's what happened with like some of our people from the struggle in the past. We was cool. We was in the neighborhood, handing out lunches like the Black Panthers, and we was, doing stuff that was conducive to us, walking kids from school, safe passage. But the minute them brothers and sisters crossed over and got into, say, J. Edgar Hoover's business, then the assassination started. So we're going to keep it organic and grassroots and stay dealing with stuff that pertains to us. And then there's room at the top for our civil engagement into policies and procedures, then perhaps we'll go that way. But on some serious stuff, don't forget your people behind the wall. And thanks to E.W. Womack, who put this book out, Books for Life Foundation. And it's important, man, because you can't get caught up this time of year. Now, elders, check on them this time of year because our bodies is metaphorically speaking like vehicles. At the end of the year, you got to change the oil, the gas, you got to do maintenance on it. And a lot of our old people have been locked up since COVID, man, and they lonely. They don't have nobody to talk to. And their bodies are fragile right now because they haven't had any maintenance. Even some of the brothers that we know that you think are healthy, including myself. Check on your people. If you got a black man at home, get him to the doctor. That's going to be the next segment on this podcast. If you love them, get them to the doctor. Because a lot of brothers ain't been to the doctor, and that's bad English, but I'll say it again. A lot of brothers have not visited the doctor's office in quite some time. And they're like a walking time bomb waiting to explode, and we can't afford to lose our loved ones like we did during COVID. So this show right here is real. Ain't no faking. Because the stuff that I really do, the camera could never take. The stuff that I really see in the streets with black people is the coldest winter ever and the hottest summers yet to come. So you think you may have heard everything on all the other podcasts, but until you get out there into the world, you ain't seen nothing yet. So thanks for listening, and keep it real, and stop going for all the okie doke, because the okie doke ain't no joke. And like I say, black folks, forever forward, never backwards, and free the worthy captives. Long live George Jackson. Peace. Thank you, sir.